Our Raiders host at Chat Sports, Mitchell Renz, was so kind to point out that it has been 1,738 days since the Broncos last beat the Raiders, which coincidentally is the same number of fights the Raiders got in last Sunday. So if you want to take down the Raiders and end this streak, hit that sub button down below. Let's turn the tide on this rivalry. Let's bring it back to what it was for the previous 25, 30 years of just dominance by Denver over Oakland and Las Vegas. You are watching the Broncos Breakdown by Chat Sports. Matthew Peterson here with some trade rumors as we get closer to the NFL trade deadline, November 5th. I've seen a couple of names pop up that I want to talk about on today's episode. Let's start with Kyle Pitts because I think this is a legitimate trade target for Atlanta. Benjamin Allbright, who I think does a great job of covering the team, tweeted out, lots of Broncos fans are asking about Amari Cooper as a trade target, which we, by the way, talked about last week. I sincerely doubt it. I'd be looking at Atlanta and Kyle Pitts personally. So let's dive into Kyle Pitts as a potential trade target for the Broncos and whether or not I think it's likely or whether or not I think the Broncos should do it. But let's at least set the scene a little bit, get you guys familiar with Pitts. So the former 4th overall pick out of Florida has not lived up to expectations for being a top 5 draft pick. But when it comes to the finances of a trade, it's very, very cheap and very, very simple. His base salary this year is a little over $1 million. Anytime you're trading for a player mid-season, the only number you have to look at is the base salary, right? That is what you would be taking on for the remainder of the season. His 5th-year option next year is fully guaranteed. So, like Jerry Jeudy going to the Browns, that $10+ million would be fully guaranteed for any team acquiring him next year. But Pitts has not had the year I think fantasy owners were hoping for and really much of Atlanta was hoping for. I mean, dominant rookie season, over 1,000 yards, which was an NFL record for a rookie tight end, but he comes off a Week 4 performance where he had 0 receptions, which was the first time in a game that he started and finished. So, looking at Pitts a little bit closer, we can see the downfall, and a lot of folks point to 2022 as a bit of a turning point. Pitts suffered a knee injury 2/3 of the way into the season. He had to get knee surgery on that, and that's somewhat attributed to, I think, maybe a slower 2023 campaign. But now we are pretty well removed from that knee injury, so the hope is he is back to 100%. I don't think Atlanta, though, because it takes 2 to tango, is interested in trading away a player while they are 2-2 and looking at the next 1 to 3 seasons as a win-now window, right? Starting this year. I mean, you don't have Kirk Cousins forever. You're already kind of looking ahead a little bit by drafting Michael Penix. So for me, I feel like it's going to take a lot of losing for the Falcons to accept, okay, Pitts isn't a fit, and we aren't going anywhere this year. Pitts may not be a fit right now, but if they're winning football games, that to me doesn't scream, okay, now that we're 5-2, 6-3, let's trade one of our starters away. Huh? How does that make you a better football team for 2024? Yeah, it might make you better down the line, but I would think Atlanta would want to capitalize on a strong start to the year if that's the case and hold on to their players, not try and get better 2 years down the line with a 3rd, 4th, or 5th round pick. And believe me, that's probably all Atlanta would get for Kyle Pitts at this point. Now, being a little bit more on the optimistic or the more expensive side, I don't think Kyle Pitts goes for a 1st or a 2nd. Maybe a 3rd, but more likely than not, probably 2 day 3 draft picks if a trade were to happen. But let's just kind of overshoot a little bit. Would you want to trade a 3rd round draft pick for Pitts? This is the pinned comment, so let me know down below. If a YouTube ad break comes on by, just get your response in, and I'll give you my answer in just a moment. For me, I would not give up a 3rd round draft pick for Kyle Pitts, but I can at least value Denver's tight end stink. Now, if we're talking about a 4th and a 5th, then yeah, I think that's something worth exploring. But when we're talking day 2 picks, I need to see a little bit more, and I haven't seen just enough to warrant a 3rd. But Pitts, who's going to turn 24 years old, a year and a half left on his rookie contract, there's a lot to like for the right price. But I'm not interested in overbuying or overspending. But we can all agree Like, if the Broncos do start to stack up some wins here and become buyers at the NFL trade deadline, tight end is definitely a position of need. I thought this was a typo from producer Reed when I saw Adam Trotman through 4 weeks had one grab for 13 yards. I was like, no, that's just last week. Oh no, that's all of this year. That's your starting tight end. It's bad. It's historically bad. Trotman's on pace for 55 yards this year. Greg Dulcich is on pace for 119 yards. To put it into context, I did some digging, and I want you guys to see how bad this is compared to last year's tight end group that finished at the bottom of the barrel, and just see how far below they are. That would, in baseball terms, that's like complaining about your right fielder having a 190 batting average and then looking to the Oakland A's and it's like, well, we have a 120 batting average. So what I have on screen here are 9 tight ends that all had under 300 yards, but more than 45% of snaps. So a decent amount of usage with not a lot of production. This is a bad group to be in. Now, some of these guys are either in their first or second year. Maybe they're more in a blocking tight end role. They're not a primary receiving threat. Dulcich was not drafted to be a blocker. Adam Trotman was not brought over to be a run blocker. Those are supposed to be some receiving threats. And they're not even close to what last year was some really low numbers. Like, I'd kill for what Gesicki did or Austin Hooper did. But Trotman and Dulcich are even in the same zip code as those guys. And they were not good. Like, do you see the point I'm making here? Those were bad numbers. And the 2 Broncos starting tight ends aren't even close to those. It's scary how bad it is 4 weeks into the season from the tight end department. But I think this is your quintessential, you get what you pay for. Like, the Broncos did not invest in the tight end room in the offseason, in free agency, or in the draft. They brought back Adam, who they traded for from the Saints last year in the NFL draft with New Orleans. But yeah, you run back a room that was leaving you wanting more last year. This is what you get. Like, Sean Payton can only put out so many fires in one offseason, and there's clearly a priority list, and that's great. And quarterback and trenches, those groups are higher up than tight end. But I would hope for at least like C level tight end production. You're getting F level tight end production. Next up on the show, switching gears, I want to talk about just some AFC West trade rumors, as Davante Adams has been a popular name in some trade circles, so we're going to look at that. But first, I want to give a quick shout-out to our sponsor today, which is GameTime. GameTime has a new feature called GameTime Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. If you want to go catch the Broncos Raiders game, a Nuggets or Avs games as those seasons get underway soon, visit GameTime first because they are giving Broncos Country $20 off their first purchase when you use code CHATSPORTS. Terms apply, but again, download the GameTime app and redeem code CHAT Sports for $20 off. Terms apply, but create an account and redeem that code with your first purchase. GameTime has so many cool features like the all-in price option, which allows you to just kind of skip the whole what kind of taxes and fees am I waiting for when I get to checkout and know the price from the start. I put all that information in the comments and description of today's video. Download GameTime today. What time is it? Game time. Literally 2 minutes after we finished filming today's episode, this bombshell came out that Davante Adams informed the team that he would prefer to be traded. So, what you're going to watch next on today's episode is all filmed before this came out, but old me somewhat saw this coming a little bit as, yeah, it feels like Davante Adams is going to get traded. So, keep an eye on this, but great news for Denver going into Week 5. Doesn't look like Adams will be playing, and it doesn't look like Max Crosby will be available as he continues to battle an ankle injury as well. So, without further ado, old me talking about Adams getting dealt. So, we got a Raiders beat reporter amongst a handful of news outlets and people well tapped in with the Las Vegas reporting that there appears to be some dialogue regarding Davante Adams and a potential trade. And things, unfortunately, did not get better for the Raiders or anyone who's hoping that Tay stays in Las Vegas when you've got head coach Antonio Pierce liking an Instagram post about Davante Adams getting traded. Now, Pierce would later go on to unlike this post. Maybe it's like a Curb Your Enthusiasm episode, the accidental like. To me, I don't think so. Like, this seems probably too big of a coincidence for that to be the case, and maybe he just realized I probably shouldn't engage in that type of behavior. But my initial reaction when I saw this was perfect timing. The Broncos play the Raiders on Sunday, and they may not have Max Crosby due to injury, and they may not be playing Davante Adams because they are trying to trade him, and they don't want him to get injured and ruin his trade value. So, what an awesome time for Denver to have a game with Las Vegas at home against the Raiders. So, it's unfortunately something going without saying here, but Adams has been a bit of a Broncos killer. Had the overtime touchdown 2 years ago. And in his career against the Broncos, over 5 grabs, pretty much 70 yards a game, and 3 touchdowns, and a 5-1 record. Now, we haven't really seen Adams at his, I think, full strength compared to his time in Green Bay since going over to Vegas, and that's not really fair to Adams because he's still Davante Adams. Like, just because he wasn't as good as he was early in his career, he's still one of the better wide receivers in football, of course, one of the best wide receivers in football. I think if it comes to the Broncos getting involved in this, that's a long shot. Just an AFC West trade seems unlikely. Not impossible. We saw TJ Hawkinson go from the Lions to the Vikings, but that's kind of a one-off. There's not really a long history or pattern of interdivision trades for star skill players. But I think a trade overall with Davante Adams seems likely in my opinion. So I want to run through some destinations that Adams could end up at. We'll start with the New York Jets. You got Aaron Rodgers. I don't think I need to say anything more here. New York sitting at 2-2. They're kind of desperate for maybe a bit of a spark offensively. And you know Rodgers is going to go, pounding on the GM's table and door and desk to get a trade done. So the Jets definitely jump out to me. The Bills, 3-1. They kind of went with a, hey, we're going to slightly reset this year, move on from Stephon Diggs, and we'll have to lean on some players that are questionable bets to make. And so far, they've paid off. They're 3-1, but I could see them wanting to go get a true superstar like Adams. The Steelers were interested in Brandon Ayuk, so as long as they are still interested in a wide receiver, I don't see why they wouldn't pick up the phone. I put the Chiefs and Packers in here, slightly joking, but also kind of not. Like, let's say the Raiders get 3 trade offers, okay? And 2 teams offer them a second or a third. And the Chiefs call and say, we'll give you a first. I think the Raiders still say no to that because they don't want to see Adams go within the division to the hated Kansas City Chiefs. But they also probably realize that first-round pick is probably going to be pick 29, 30, 31, or 32. So very late in the first. And a second-round pick from another team might be somewhere in the late 30s. So we're only talking about a difference of 6, 7, 8, 9 spots. So overall, it's not that big of a jump, and it's worth sending Adams out of the division so you don't help the Chiefs win a 3rd straight Super Bowl and make life more difficult for everyone in the AFC West. But again, if the Chiefs come in with an offer that's better than every other team's, maybe Las Vegas decide, hey, we like this better offer, and we're not worried about Adams coming back to haunt us and help the Chiefs win another Soupy. And then I put the Packers on there. I mean, obviously, it's a little strange to see him go back to Green Bay, but maybe if the Packers feel like, you know what, we feel like this is a real championship contending roster, and we're looking for a superstar receiver like Adams, who they are well familiar with, and now that Rodgers is gone, not that the two couldn't be apart at all, but the Packers somewhat hit the reset button, but they kind of got in the fast lane on that reset, and they are right back in the driver's seat of the NFC. Maybe they decide, okay, let's bring Adams back because when we traded him away, we kind of thought we were heading towards a soft rebuild. The rebuild's over, and we're ready to win right now, and Adams could be a big asset in that. So let me know down below in the comment section below where you think Davante Adams will get traded to. If I had to predict it, I would say the New York Jets. I feel like it's just too obvious with Aaron Rodgers. He's gotten his way a whole bunch over there since he signed. They've added a lot of former teammates of his, and I don't see why it would end now. So, yeah, Adams is a Jet before November. I'll say that right now. I'll appreciate everyone for tuning in. That likes our video. It goes a long way to help support the channel. If you have not subscribed yet, consider doing so as well. It's completely free. Plus, we want to take down the Raiders report in subscribers this week.